I've cleaned hundreds of rooms in that hotel. Hundreds of lives passing through, leaving behind crumbs, receipts, lipstick stains, and once, even a wedding ring. But never something like that letter. That morning, the rain hadn't stopped since dawn. The lobby smelled of wet carpet and coffee, and my manager, Mr. Patel, was already in one of his moods. Room 412, double-check everything. VIP guest, he muttered, sliding the clipboard toward me. Got it, I said, tying my hair back. I'd been a housekeeper there for 6 years. Long enough to know that VIP usually meant extra mess, extra attitude, and extra stress. Room 412 was on the top floor, one of the suites. I took the elevator up, mop bucket rattling beside me. When the doors opened, the corridor was silent, except for the hum of air conditioning. The room was empty. Guests checked out early, apparently. The air still carried the faint scent of expensive cologne and whiskey. On the table, an empty glass, an untouched croissant, and a folded white envelope under a room key. At first I thought it was a tip. I picked it up, but there was writing on it. In neat cursive, a woman's name. To Charlotte. My name isn't Charlotte. And the handwriting, it didn't look like something meant for the hotel staff. I should have put it aside. I should have dropped it in lost and found like we're supposed to. But my fingers hesitated. The kind of hesitation that feels like a whisper saying, wait. The envelope was sealed, but not firmly. I could see a bit of paper inside, cream-colored, thick, like old-fashioned stationery. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was the rain. Maybe it was the silence. Or maybe it was because, for years, I'd cleaned up other people's lives without ever being part of one. So I opened it. The letter began. My dearest Charlotte, if you're reading this, it means I didn't have the courage to say what I needed to in person. I wish I'd met you sooner, before life taught me how to hide. Before duty became my excuse, I froze. The handwriting was beautiful, steady, like a man who'd rehearsed his pain. You told me once that honesty was love's truest form. I wish I could have been that brave. But you deserve someone who isn't bound by secrets. I stopped reading. My pulse was racing. This wasn't just a love letter. It sounded like a confession. I looked toward the door, half expecting someone to walk in. But the hallway was still quiet. Just the rain tapping against the glass. Part of me wanted to put it back, pretend I'd never seen it. But another part, the one that had survived too many lonely nights in a one-room apartment, cleaning up after strangers, needed to know the rest. So I read on. There's money in the safe under the desk. It isn't a gift. Think of it as the truth I never gave you. The least I can do for the woman who made me remember what love feels like. My breath caught. Money, safe under the desk. I glanced around. The suite's desk was elegant. Walnut wood, polished. I crouched down and opened the small cabinet beneath it. Sure enough, there was a safe, unlocked. Inside, a brown envelope, thick and heavy. I didn't dare open it. I just stared. This was no ordinary guest. I slipped the love letter back into its envelope, heart pounding. Something about it felt unfinished, like I was holding the middle of a story, missing both the beginning and the end. When I looked at the signature at the bottom, I froze again. Always yours are, just that, a single letter. But in our hotel system, there was only one VIP guest that morning with an R, Richard Halden, the name everyone at the hotel whispered about. CEO of Halden Industries, billionaire, married, and the woman, Charlotte. I didn't know who she was, but suddenly everything inside me twisted. A married man leaving a secret letter and money for another woman? I placed the envelope on the desk, trying to ignore the voice inside me that whispered, what if this woman never gets it? Later that afternoon, I went down to the lost and found office. Mira, my friend and co-worker, was there. What's up? She asked. Guest left this, I said, handing her the letter. She glanced at it. Charlotte, huh? Probably his wife. I wanted to say no, I don't think so. But I didn't. Instead, I nodded and left. But that night I couldn't sleep. The letter kept replaying in my head, the loneliness in his words, the quiet sorrow in his sentences. I lay awake wondering, how many people have I cleaned up after, never knowing the storms they carried inside? By morning I'd made a decision. I went back to the hotel early. Room 412 was already cleaned for the next guest, but I asked the receptionist if Richard Halden had left any forwarding information. She frowned. He requested privacy. No contact info. Of course he did. But then she added, he did book another night next Friday. Same room. My stomach flipped. Friday. That was only 4 days away. The week passed slowly, each day filled with rooms, sheets, and the soft thrum of vacuum cleaners. But every time I passed the 4th floor, my mind went back to that letter. By the time Friday came, I'd made up my mind. I'd return the letter in person. If it wasn't meant for me, then I'd make sure it reached who it was meant for. I clocked out late, waited until most guests had gone to dinner, and quietly went up to 412. The lights were on inside, the door slightly ajar. I knocked gently. "Housekeeping," a man's voice answered, deep and calm. "Come in." When I stepped inside, he was sitting at the same desk where I'd found the letter. Richard Halden. He looked different from his photos. Older, yes, but tired. His eyes carried the weight of someone who'd run out of places to hide. He turned toward me. "Is something wrong?" I swallowed hard. "Sir, last week I found something in your room. A letter addressed to a woman named Charlotte." His expression didn't change, but his eyes darkened. A flicker of something between fear and sorrow. He leaned back slowly. "You opened it?" I lowered my gaze. "Yes, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. But I thought maybe..." "Maybe what?" He interrupted softly. "That you could fix what I broke?" The question cut deep, not because of its harshness, but because of the sadness behind it. "I just thought she should have it," I whispered. "Whoever Charlotte is." He stared at me for a long time, then said quietly, "Charlotte's gone." My breath hitched. "Gone?" He nodded. "She died 3 months ago." The room fell silent. Outside, thunder rolled over the city, and I realized the letter wasn't just a confession, it was a goodbye. I froze. My hands trembled slightly, clutching the edge of my uniform. The air in the suite felt heavier now, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I didn't know." He nodded slowly, eyes distant. "No one does. I never told the press, not my family, not even my wife." That last word hit me like a quiet slap. Wife. He stood and walked toward the window, staring out at the rain-soaked skyline. "Charlotte worked here," he said, voice soft. "In this very hotel. She was a cleaner like you." My heart thudded once, sharply. She was kind, honest. She reminded me what it meant to feel human again. I tried to stop myself, but he exhaled shakily. "You can't help who you feel safe with, can you?" I didn't answer. His pain hung in the room, thick as fog. "I wrote that letter to her after she found out who I really was," he continued. "She didn't want to see me again. Said she couldn't love someone who belonged to another world." His voice cracked slightly. I never got to give it to her. Something inside me shifted, part empathy, part ache. I'd spent years cleaning up people's messes, invisible in the background, never realizing some of them carried the same kind of loneliness I did. "Why keep coming back here?" I asked quietly. He turned. "Because this is the last place I ever felt seen." The simplicity of that answer pierced me. I reached into my pocket and took out the letter. I'd kept it safe all week, afraid it would disappear before I returned it. "Then maybe it's time you said goodbye," I said, placing it on the desk. He stared at it, the envelope that had traveled through so much silence, and for a moment, he didn't move. Then, slowly, he picked it up and pressed it to his chest. "Do you believe people like me deserve forgiveness?" he asked. I met his eyes. "I think people deserve to try." He smiled faintly, tears threatening to spill, but never quite falling. "You remind me of her, you know. The way you listen without asking for anything in return." I felt a lump rise in my throat. "Maybe she's still teaching you something, just through someone else." He nodded, as if the thought comforted him. Then he turned back to the window, staring into the endless night. I took a quiet step back toward the door. "Good night, Mr. Halden." He didn't turn around. "Good night, and thank you." The next morning I returned to room 412 to clean again. But when I opened the door, the room was empty and silent. He'd checked out early. On the table, beside the lamp, sat another white envelope. My name was written on it. My breath caught. I looked around once more, then opened it. "For Maya. Thank you for reminding me what kindness sounds like. Inside the safe is something that should go to someone who actually deserves it. Keep it or donate it. Either way, make sure it finds its way back into the world." Or my pulse quickened. I walked to the desk, hesitated, then opened the safe. The same brown envelope was inside. The one from before. I pulled it out. It was still thick, heavy. When I peeked inside, my breath hitched. Stacks of $100 bills, neatly bound. More money than I'd ever seen in my life, and beneath them, another note. She wanted to open a small shelter for women who needed a place to start again. Maybe now she finally can. My knees. It wasn't a bribe. It wasn't guilt. It was love, unfinished, but not forgotten. Over the next few weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about Charlotte. Who she was, what she dreamed of, why her story had ended too soon, and why fate had left her letter in my hands. One night, as I was closing up, I found myself talking to Mira about it. What would you do, I asked, if you found something that could change lives, but it wasn't really yours to use? She didn't even look up from the counter. Then use it for what it was meant for. The world needs more people who do the right thing for the right reasons. I smiled faintly. That's easy to say. It's harder to ignore, she replied. 3 months later, the Charlotte Foundation opened its doors, a small shelter for single mothers and women escaping hardship. It wasn't big, just an old building on the corner of 3rd and Willow, but it was full of warmth. The first night, I hung a photo of a handwritten letter on the wall, framed under glass. The one that had started it all. The only visible words were, "You told me once that honesty was love's truest form. I didn't keep a cent of the money for myself. I didn't need to." Every woman who walked through that door, every tired smile, every whispered thank you. That was worth more than anything money could ever buy. A few months later, I got a plain envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, a note and a single photograph. The note read, "It's beautiful. Thank you for finishing what I couldn't. R." And the photograph. A man standing outside the shelter, smiling at the sign, just before dawn. I smiled too. I didn't know if I'd ever see him again. But somehow I felt that wasn't the point. Some stories don't end. They simply continue through the hands of those brave enough to hold them. If this story touched your heart, remember, sometimes the things not meant for us arrive anyway, because we're the ones meant to finish them. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done with the letter? And if you believe in second chances and silent heroes, subscribe to Tale Story House, where every story reminds us that kindness once found can still change everything.